Fellow African comrade, good morning. You may be aware that we have launched the Second French Revolution, and that since the 1st of July this year, we have been campaigning and lobbying and trying to get our compatriots, our friends, to join us in this campaign against French hegemony in Africa. As you may know, this campaign will be launched on the 17th of this month in Paris and in Pretoria in South Africa. Now, you may be aware that over the past 101 years, France has carried out a very, very devilish system across the African continent, covering at least 14 to 16 countries, in which France has basically the ownership of these countries, the economy of these countries, the politics of these countries, the social life of the countries, and even the economic and mental state of the people of these various countries. And I'm going to break it down so that you understand. We are all aware of what is called the France-Afrique. What is France-Afrique? France-Afrique is basically French policy that was left behind after what we call independence in the early 60s, late 50s and early 60s, where a lot of African countries assumed that they were independent, whereas in fact they had been left in a state of post-colonialism, which left a lot of their resources in the hands of France. And how were they able to do this? They made sure that the leaders of these countries were basically French stooges. And where a country had a good and truly patriotic leader, the French made sure that this leader was assassinated through coups d'etat, through accidents, through poisoning. There were all kinds of machinations by France to ensure that none of these countries had a truly good and patriotic leader. And you can count the countries, there are many of them. In the Upper Volta, what was called the Upper Volta, Burkina Faso today, in Togo, in Benin, a bit everywhere. Now, France-Afrique, with the installation of the stooges, then put in place leaders whose job was to ensure that they protected French interests in these African countries. And 65% of the GDP of these countries basically was transferred to France. In fact, all 100% of our resources, our GDP, our earnings per year go into the French treasury. And out of the 100%, France has the goodness and the kindness to donate 35% back to us and keeps 65% for herself, on the pretext that this money is being kept in case we hit bad times. But the truth is that we've been hitting bad times for the past 56, 57 years, and not once has France stepped up to help us. Instead, our currencies get devaluated every single time that we hit these bad times. And even worse, when the French economy is suffering, France just transfers the burden of its economy to our people. So France-Afrique is basically this system, economic system, where 65% of our GDP, our money, goes to France. France then takes the money and builds beautiful roads and nice buildings and wonderful treasury, beautiful airport and everything. That is our money. 16 countries have got their money that is being used to build and construct France. That's number one. Number two, you may be aware that we got our currencies which are pegged to the French currency that does not exist anymore. Before, there used to be the French franc. There is no more French franc, but we still have our currencies, the franc CFA, which are pegged to the French economy in a nutshell. And you may be aware that the French CFA, the franc CFA was the French currency that is being used by the colonial territories of France in Africa. So that is what the French CFA was. And in spite of the fact that the rest of the world has refused to use this currency, including France, France ensures that our African countries continue to use this currency. Now, what this does is that France has complete control over our economy. And by this control, they are able to control other levels of our economy, of our society. This includes our education. You may be aware that for many, especially those in Cameroon, southern Cameroons, for the past 56, 57, probably 100 years since 1916, 101 year since 1916, when France took over these territories. The curriculum, school curriculum, from nursery school all the way to tertiary education in universities is being controlled by France. So our curriculum is being developed in France, and therefore the education that we get, the school that we go to, is meant to program our minds to function in a particular kind of way, which is why some of our best economists, our best sociologists, they continue to think and operate in a particular manner that will favor French hegemony in Africa. You may be aware also that the contract that through this France-African, what was called les accords de coopération between France and Africa, basically gifted all our resources to France. So for many of our countries, even though we are rich in resources, gold, diamond, oil, everything you can think of, coltan, most of these resources are actually French property. So as a country, if we stumble upon diamond, a big diamond mine, or upon gold, the first thing we must do is call France and hand over to France to think about what she's going to do with it. And if the French do their calculations and they realize that this currency, this oil or this diamond is really not worth it, then they will give us the permission to trade our resources or whatever resource we found with another country. But the right of first choice always goes to France. So that is why our right over our territory only ends on the surface of the territory we sit on. Everything beneath the territory belongs to France. You also know, for instance, that in many of our countries, the Accord de Coopération gives the right to France to step in whenever it finds necessary and do whatever it deems necessary to make the changes. So even if the president decides that we don't want this, and the French ambassador decides that the president doesn't know what he's talking about, and in fact, we know better, the French military can step in and intervene on behalf of us, even though we don't think they should. So the France-Afrique is this system that has been put in place over years to ensure that we are kept in a state of perpetual slavery. And the French have been very, very good at ensuring that we stay in this state. They make sure we get the leaders that we don't want, the leaders we don't deserve, and everything we don't want. And as a result, we have been placed in a state of perpetual poverty for the past 60 years, to the point where, as you know, a lot of our young people are beginning to leave our territories. They've been leaving the territory for the past 20 years, 30 years, going abroad. Going abroad where? To Europe, mostly. To do what? To go and work, to look for greener pastures. But how do they get there? Now think about our brothers, our sisters, who have to cross the Sahara Desert, walk across miles and miles of the Sahara Desert, and think about the thousands of them that die every year trying to get to the greener pastures. Now think about our brothers and our sisters who try to swim across the Mediterranean Sea simply to get away from this misery that has been created by the French. And where are they going to? They are trying to go to Europe, the same part of the world that has been taking everything that belongs to us, and for which France is the representative number one. So many of us arrive in France and in other parts of Europe, and what do? We do all the menial jobs, anything and everything that they don't want to do. We sweep their streets, we clean their toilets, we do, and just any job. With the janitors, we open the doors and everything, and those are the jobs that are reserved for us. Hotels, we have to open the doors, and these hotels happen to be made up of our wood, of our forest, of our timber, of our rubber, of everything that is exploited from us. And when we serve the tables, we are serving the chocolates and the cocoa and the tea and everything that is exploited from our territory. And so we have to run away from this territory that is so rich, that does not belong to us, to go and serve the master in a country, in a territory where we are nothing but the ones who are supposed to open doors and sweep streets. As a result, we have come to the realization that the world order today does not permit us, does not allow us, does not give us the resources to be able to fight the French. Not militarily, not financially, not diplomatically, but we have got one tool that we can use, and that is the economic tool. Now, economically, France is super dependent on Africa. If you look at Air France, the majority of the clientele of Air France are largely Africans traveling from Africa to the rest of the world, and largely in Europe. Now, when we start, we have to start boycotting the use of Air France. Many of us buy cars, Peugeot, Renault in our countries. We have to start boycotting those vehicles, to the point where the French economy needs to start suffering, just like we have suffered for the past 101 years. So the French Revolution, the Second French Revolution, is modeled around the valiant men and women who rose up in 1789 and decided that enough was enough, and decided that they were going to storm the Bastille, which was the symbol of French tyranny against the simple folks of France at the time. And so with the storming of the Bastille came the French Revolution, and that transformed France into this country that became the model that was admired and respected across the world for its fraternity, for its liberty, as well as for its equality. Unfortunately, equality, fraternity, and liberty only applies to French people. It doesn't apply to Africans. And as a result, we are going to step up and start to ensure that we take our place, because we know that place will not be given to us. We have to take it. So the launch of the Second French Revolution basically requires that on the 17th of July, which is in 2 days, we all step out of our flats, out of our apartments, out of our houses, go out there and demonstrate in front of the French embassy. Ensure that the French embassy knows that we know what is going on, that we have come to the point where we are saying enough is enough, and that from now henceforth we are going to register our discontent through the boycotting of French goods and services. But the Second French Revolution and the boycott of French goods and services is not limited to people from these countries. It is the responsibility of each and every African. Why? Because Africa today remains the last on the global scale, economic scale, the global political scale, the global social scale, for the simple reason that we've got 16 countries that are holding us back. So as an African, you have got the responsibility to join your brothers and sisters and fight for your place, because as long as they stay behind, you will also remain behind. As proponents of anti-immigration in various countries across the world, we begin to say, listen, we are more than prepared to go back to our countries. But first, you have to help us get rid of the tyrant who has made sure that our countries live in abject poverty. The moment we get rid of the tyrant and their exploitation and all the proxies they have put there in the name of leaders, then we will go back and rebuild our countries, and you will not have to deal with us in your country. So join us in this boycott of French goods and services. Join us in the Second French Revolution, so that once we take over our territories, we can go back and build it for ourselves and for our children. On the 17th of July, we will be storming Paris. We're going to occupy Paris. We are asking every single person across Europe to be in Paris, travel on Sunday, arrive in time, make sure that we register, we make very clear to the French that enough is enough, and that we have only started with the Second French Revolution and the boycott of French goods and services. We will, every last Friday of the month, demonstrate against either the French embassy, the French treasury, the French school, the French, what they call the French Cultural Center in any and every country we find ourselves in, and make sure that the media is there, that the media registers what we are doing, and we send it across the world to say that Africans have finally stood up and this is our time. We welcome you and thank you very much for joining us on this campaign. Welcome to the Second French Revolution. A luta continua. Thank you so much.